The cargo bay doors slammed shut with a finality that echoed through Jackson Reed's bones. He pressed his palms against the cold metal, listening to the hum of engines powering up on the other side. His crew, if he could even call them that anymore, had left him behind on the derelict Crevathon vessel without a second thought. Should have known better than to trust pirates, Jackson muttered, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The ship groaned around him, ancient and dying. Emergency lights flickered in sickly yellow intervals, casting long shadows down the corridor. His toolkit was still strapped to his belt, at least. They'd taken everything else, his communicator, his sidearm, even his ration pack. But they'd left him his tools, probably figuring a wrench wouldn't save him from what lurked in the darkness. A howl pierced the silence. Jackson's blood ran cold. The Crevathon were an extinct species, wiped out in some long-forgotten war, but the rumors about their bioweapons had survived. Vralkesh, the Whispers called them, wolf-like creatures engineered for hunting, killing, and never stopping. The creatures were supposedly still aboard derelict Crevathon ships, trapped in stasis or waiting in the shadows. Another howl answered the first, closer this time. Jackson forced himself to think. Panic was a luxury he couldn't afford. He scanned the corridor, noting the exposed conduits running along the ceiling and the maintenance panels every 10 meters. The ship's power was failing, which meant the environmental systems were probably offline in most sections. If he could reach the engineering bay, maybe, just maybe, he could restore partial power and send a distress signal. The scratching of claws on metal made him spin around. 6 pairs of eyes glowed in the darkness, reflecting the emergency lights like amber coins. The creatures emerged slowly, deliberately. They were massive, easily the size of earth wolves but built heavier with armored plates along their spines and shoulders that gleamed like obsidian. Their fangs were too long, their limbs too angular, their intelligence too evident in the way they moved. They were spreading out. Flanking him, the largest stepped forward, her coat a silvery gray that seemed to shimmer with bioluminescent patterns. The Alpha. Her eyes locked onto his, and Jackson saw something unexpected there. Not mindless hunger, but calculation. Assessment. Easy, Jackson said softly, holding his hands out to show he was unarmed. I'm not here to hurt you. The Alpha tilted her head, and a low rumble emanated from her chest. Not quite a growl, not quite a purr. The other Vralkesh held their positions, waiting for her command. Jackson's mind raced. These weren't mindless beasts. The Crevathon had engineered them for warfare, which meant they were intelligent, possibly sapient. And if they were intelligent, maybe they could be reasoned with. He slowly reached for his toolkit, moving with exaggerated care. The Alpha's ears flattened, but she didn't attack. Jackson pulled out a small LED light and clicked it on, pointing it at the floor. The beam was weak but steady in the gloom. The Alpha's eyes followed the light, pupils dilating. Her pack members shifted, uncertain. Light, Jackson said, pointing at the flickering emergency strips. These are dying. Dark is bad, but I can fix it. I can bring back the light. The Alpha stared at him for a long moment. Then, impossibly, she dipped her head in what looked like a nod. Jackson's heart hammered as he moved toward the nearest maintenance panel. The pack parted to let him through, their eyes tracking his every movement. He pried open the panel with practiced ease, revealing a mess of corroded circuits and frayed wiring. Decades of neglect had taken their toll. This is going to take a while, he murmured, more to himself than to the wolves. The Alpha positioned herself beside him, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her body. She was watching him work, her gaze intense and focused. The other Vralkesh settled into guard positions around him, forming a protective perimeter. As Jackson worked, he began to talk. It was an old habit from his years working solo maintenance shifts. My name's Jackson Reed, human, from Earth. That's a planet about 17 light-years from here. I was supposed to be getting paid to fix a junker freighter, but instead I got stranded on a ghost ship with a pack of bioengineered wolves. Not my best day, I'll admit. The Alpha's ear twitched. You understand me, don't you? Jackson glanced at her. The Crevathon probably gave you language processing. Makes sense. Coordinating complex tactics requires communication. The Alpha made a sound, something between a chuff and a vocalization. It was deliberate, shaped almost like she was trying to form words without the anatomy for it. Jackson's hand stilled. You're trying to talk. She leaned forward and dragged a claw across the metal deck, carving shallow grooves with precise movements. Jackson watched, stunned, as she scraped out crude but recognizable symbols. Krevthan script. He'd seen it in the ship's corridors. The message was simple. Lyravec, Alpha, protect. Lyravec, Jackson repeated. That's your name? The wolf, Lyravec, dipped her head again. Something shifted in Jackson's chest. These weren't monsters. They were survivors just like him, abandoned on a dying ship, trapped by the very people who'd created them. All right, Lyravec, he said, returning to his work with renewed determination. Let's get this bucket flying again. Together. Over the following hours, Jackson and the pack moved through the ship methodically. He repaired what he could while Lyravec and her pack scouted ahead, clearing paths and warning him of structural weaknesses. They worked with startling efficiency. Lyravec would communicate through gestures and those strange vocalizations, and her pack would respond instantly. When Jackson finally restored power to the engineering bay, the lights blazed to life across 3 decks. The Vralkesh howled in triumph, their voices echoing through the corridors like a song. Jackson activated the distress beacon, then turned to find Lyravec standing beside him. He reached out slowly, and after a moment's hesitation, she pressed her massive head into his palm. We're getting off this ship, Jackson promised. All of us. When the rescue ship arrived 2 days later, they found something unprecedented. A human mechanic and a pack of supposedly extinct bioweapons working together to keep a derelict vessel stable. The galaxy's salvage laws were clear. Jackson had claimed the ship through occupancy and repair. It was his now, and so were his new crew. The first human-Vralkesh partnership was born not from conquest or subjugation, but from mutual survival and respect. Jackson Reed and Lyravec became legends in their own right, proving that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or warfare. It was the ability to find kinship in the most unlikely places. Even in the darkness of space, abandoned and alone, humans would always find a way to build bridges instead of walls. And sometimes, those bridges came with fangs.